Hello, and welcome to The Alt Left.
Welcome back, everybody, for round 3. You've made it to the third episode of The Alt Left. We're really glad you're here. As always, I'm your host, Chris. We have the good Reverend Dr. K as well.
Good evening, everyone.
And my boy, Matty Cake. Say hello, buddy.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back.
It's good to be here. So, we're here to talk about some serious issues about misinformation today, which is really important. Obviously, COVID is here to stay for quite a while. It's been here for almost a year. It's going to be here for a minute. And this is something that's killing a whole lot of people and causing a whole lot of problems. So having your information correct is important, because those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Don't believe the hype. Take it by the numbers. We're going to talk about COVID today. So the good
Fun
Reverend.
times. Always an upbeat podcast here at the Alt Left.
Damn right. We're here to make smiles.
And we're not in the same room, just so you know.
Thank God, because
we
my
here at the Alt
God.
Left do believe in social distancing. We do believe in science, and we do believe in not being a piece of shit that doesn't care about other people.
But unfortunately, Matt doesn't believe in showers. So that is also the reason after the vaccine, we will still not be in the same room.
Yeah, but that's for a much different and entirely more scary reason.
Religion.
Okay, now you're just being
religion?
mean. Now you're just being mean.
Well, just the lack thereof. I mean, if cleanliness is close to godliness.
Then
The most outspoken atheist I know sure as hell ain't bathing.
Touche, sir. Touche. But just for a point of clarification, because this is only our third episode, I shower regularly.
Yep, once a month, whether he needs it or not. So, okay, why don't you start us off with a State of the Union? How's that COVID going? I heard it was going to blow away. It was going to be over by Easter. No biggie.
Yeah, it was done like 8 months ago, right?
It's no big deal, you know.
Like racism, it's over now, right?
Yeah, we had a black president. All gone.
Yeah, it's all over. No worries
it's done.
anymore.
Just done. It'll go away on its own. As of right now, worldwide, 63.4 million cases. You heard that correct. 63.4 million cases and 1.47 million dead people attributed to COVID. That's worldwide. Now,
Yeah, if I recall, I was reading that in November for active cases, it surpassed 4 million, which is double the number for October. Like in 1 month, we've doubled.
yes, that is
Yep.
correct. That is also correct.
We are the champions, my
We're
friend.
number one.
I was talking worldwide. That 4 million active cases, I believe, is that's the U.S. only. Is it not correct?
What do you think? I did research? I don't know.
No, he's right. He's right.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
Well, wait, what do
total.
you mean difference between total cases or active cases is what we're
Okay,
distinguishing.
so active cases, actual
It was
people
this
sick right
was
this
total.
minute.
Yeah, I may have misspoken earlier. So before anybody writes us any angry emails, this was total cases recorded have surpassed 4 million.
Remember, folks, it's nerdylibs@gmail.com. Nerdylibs@gmail.com.
Because for some fucked up reason, the alt left at gmail.com was already taken. So whoever
Yeah.
has it, fuck you.
And that is the address to send compliments and checks marked out to cash. For any complaints or any problems, please send that to president@whitehouse.gov for any complaints or spam mail.
13.6 million total cases here in the United States, and deaths of 268,000 as of today, December 1st, 2020. That is a death rate of about 1.97%. That's kind of on par where they actually thought we would actually be overall death rate. Now, that's still a lot of fucking people dead, considering that our population here in the United States is 328.2 million.
I really don't understand, because from what I've seen, all it takes is a military riding a helicopter to a private hospital wing with experimental medication and a crap ton of money, and then a vacation at a private golf course, and you'll recover.
Yeah,
You mean
that's all
the
you need.
best socialized medicine that can be had?
Yeah.
Oh, got it.
No, freedom medicine.
I misunderstood.
Yeah. Don't forget, this country is the only place in the world that has freedom. No other place,
Nope.
just here.
Just here.
Yeah, forget about the other 195 countries that also have freedom.
Nope.
Yeah. Nope,
They
they didn't
stole
happen. Fake news.
Yep. Fake news. Fake news.
So, like I said, 268,000 deaths attributed to COVID here in the United States, and
That's a lot of people.
it is a lot of people. So, death rate of 1.97%, that still is pretty on par with what they were expecting initially, but that is not by any means close to what some of the other better first world nations have done. That is actually probably third or fourth on the list of percentage of deaths per case total. So the next 4 countries are countries I think that you may or may not think make sense. So next on the list, because we're the worst in the US, the next worst is India. They have 9.46 million total cases and 138,000 deaths, with a death rate of 1.4%.
I would actually have a question about India,
Sure.
though. And it's something I've heard people talking about India. India has a major rural population that
Correct.
doesn't typically have access to this kind of data calculation. Is that factored in? Do we know how accurate that number is?
This is all information that's coming from CDC. Okay.
Can't
So
trust those guys.
I can only assume that it is as accurate as we are going to get of information at this point.
Yeah,
That's
if
what
it's
the
CDC,
numbers everybody's going on. I'm going to say that it's good.
Yeah, because they're pulling that stuff from like the WHO, and they've got boots on the ground, so that's actually probably a pretty damn good number.
Yeah, 9.46 million cases, but their population is 1.353 billion with a B, not an M, a B, a billion. 1.35 billion people. Okay,
That's almost 10 times what we have, isn't it?
Okay, so they are 17.3% of the world population. World population is 7.8 billion people, right? The United States is 4.25% of the world population. So that's it's like a quarter of the population here in the United States.
Right. It's like 4 times more than what we have, yeah.
Correct. It's 4 times more, essentially. But their death rate is lower, and their infection rate is lower. And yes, they are more spread out, but there's 4 times as many of them, which to me is absolutely insane. Okay, Brazil is next with 6.34 million total cases and 173,000 deaths. Their death rate is much higher than everybody else at 2.7%. And then it goes Russia and France, and their death rates are 1.74 and 1.2% respectively. The questions that we have to really ask here is why are we so much worse than everyone else? And it comes down to really like 2 or 3 factors. Okay, first of all, we have a bunch of people in this country that will not wear masks. We also have government that will not mandate masks. We have a bunch of people that have decided that it's okay to do all kinds of risky things like travel during the holidays, go to Halloween parties, because we saw a huge boom of cases 10 days after Halloween.
Yeah, and Labor Day and all that had the same thing. There was a giant boom.
Yeah, it happened after Labor Day. It happens after every holiday where people go out of the house and gather.
Yeah, and this Thanksgiving, I mean, Fauci's actually warned, like, what his quote was, we're going to see surge upon surge of cases in the weeks after Thanksgiving, which is where we're at now. You know, we're almost hitting 1 week later. We're going to start seeing massive cases in the next week or two. And there's, I mean, TSA has estimated 26 million people went through American airports in the week around Thanksgiving, in the weekend of Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all of our health experts told everyone to stay at home, isolate, don't travel, even if it's family, don't go anywhere. And yet, our airports had their busiest period since the shutdown. And
So something that's actually interesting about that is it's not actually the travel that's causing people to get sick. It's kind of a misnomer. It's actually that you're leaving your standard place of life. You're going somewhere else with people that you don't necessarily know, and you're gathering with people that you have no idea where they have been or are going to be.
yeah,
And then
I wasn't trying to insinuate that
I'm not
flying
saying
through the
you
air in a
were.
metal hot dog was going to do it. It's the interaction
No.
with people.
And I agree. I was just trying to make that a specific point, because it's not about the actual travel. It's not about getting on a plane. You're mandated to wear a mask. You're going to wear a mask the entire time.
Well, and those flights have amazing air purifiers. I mean, you're safer on an airplane than you are grocery shopping.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think you have a good point there that maybe we do keep the eye too much on the travel and not the interaction, because how many people do you think went, well, I'm not traveling this year. I'm staying home. So I'm going to invite 30 family members over because that's what's
And
safe to do.
That's exactly what happens. It's not just the people that traveled. It's the fact that, this year, since I'm not going to Aunt Tina's house, I'm going to invite over the neighbor that I don't normally see, and I'm going to invite my good buddy over here, Jim, and his wife, and she's got a sister, so we're going to invite her. And all of a sudden, you've got 30 people in the house, and 25 of them you don't know who they are, where they've been, what they've been doing, and who else they've come in contact with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point.
And it doesn't help that you've got a significant portion of the population. I mean, there's of course the biggest portion that are just like, no, I believe Trump and I don't believe anything else. But there's also a lot of like bad stuff. You've got plenty of people that'll pull the I can't breathe line. And this is something that we've already done studies on. There is no measurable difference in oxygenation between having a mask and not having a mask. Simple.
And the only things that could even possibly be exacerbated by that are things like incredibly acute and severe COPD.
Yeah.
And illnesses that basically...
In which case you shouldn't be going out of the house anyway.
Well, and that can only be exacerbated by an N95 mask with those conditions, which you shouldn't be wearing an N95 mask. It's a mask that's specifically designed for personal protective equipment for healthcare professionals to be using in limited basis. That for any regular mask, you should be using a cloth mask, which will not exacerbate those problems.
I would actually disagree. I don't think everyone should be wearing an N95 mask to go get the mail, but there are people with majorly compromised immune systems, people who are severely impacted on catching this, where I do believe that if you feel you are at a high level of risk, there's nothing wrong with an N95 mask. But yeah, that was actually the point I was going for originally, Kay, was that the only things that could preclude you from where a doctor might tell you that wearing a mask is not in your best interests, you're at a level of sickness where you shouldn't have left your bed.
Yes.
Well, you shouldn't have left your house.
Yeah.
As far as N95 masks go, N95 masks do different things than the cloth mask does. An N95 mask, what it does is it filters any air from the outside of your nose and mouth coming in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. A cloth mask and or a surgical mask, which is what the CDC recommends you actually wear, is to keep you and your breath from spreading outside of you.
Correct.
Because what we want to do is, if you're sick, we want you not to spread it to anyone else. Yeah. Not for you to be able to go outside, wear an N95 mask, and not get sick. Yeah. You're trying to keep someone from spreading it versus keeping other people from getting it. Yeah, and that's, I think, where where people get kind of mixed up, is they don't understand what masks are doing what and why.
No, they just know that a KN95 is the Rolls Royce of masks, and so therefore that's what I must wear.
Yeah. Which an N95 mask isn't even the best mask that you can get for filtering a particulate. They're 99% or they're 95% effective.
Yes.
An N100 or P100 is actually better protection, but it's unnecessary because the N95 does what is necessary.
Yes.
Well, and you also have to remember too, people that are that do understand the idea behind a cloth mask. A lot of I've seen videos, and this is anecdotal, but you'll see videos on TikTok of people, right wingers, taking spray bottles and spraying them into cloth masks and saying, "See, it doesn't work." Not realizing they're taking a spray, putting it in the mask, and you're getting little drips that go straight down and not out. Realizing that they're actually proving the benefits of the mask. They don't understand what the mask is supposed to be doing. And so they're like, I'm going to show all you crazy libs. And they're like, no, the mask just did exactly what we wanted it to do. It stopped a spray and turned it into a drop that went straight down. So
yeah. And the point is that if there is even it is beyond a doubt that masks do massive good for slowing and stopping the spread of this disease. But even if it wasn't, I mean, that's the part that gets to me, is that if instead of it, I mean, I don't know, I don't have the numbers in front of me with the exact percentage of risk it brings down, but it's markable. It is statistically significant. But even if it wasn't, I mean, if it was 5%, if you had a 5% chance of not killing your neighbor, and all you had to do was be mildly inconvenienced for 10 minutes, Americans won't do it. And Americans won't do it then, and we won't do it at any percentage, because we are not a good society. There is no collectivism, period, in the United States. It doesn't exist here. There's a lot of places where you could argue they do have kind of a collectivist mindset, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but they have an idea of a community, of a collectivist mindset. And the Americans were told from birth that you've got to get, this is dog eat dog, you got to get what's yours, do what's right for you, do what's right for your family, and screw everyone else. And that has been painfully clear with people's refusal to wear masks. And in fact, a lot of conservatives are mocking mask wearing.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It's all this stuff about buying into it being a hoax, buying into it being fake, buying into this mask nonsense. You know, it all just keeps feeding into each other. And you know, there's noticeable lines of separation here. Like, people on the left, far and away, are willing to, or I shouldn't say willing, do believe what the scientists say and are following precautions. People on the right are not. And
it's a coin toss.
Yeah, and the people on the right, and the people on the right are probably the bigger ones spreading. I think most of Trump's big events, like, they tracked at least a few of the recent ones to be super spreader events, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
yeah, and you know, that I think is one of these events where he caught it and then spread it to everybody else that caught it after him. You know,
well, and he killed his friend. What was his name? The Herman Cain. Someone who was a Trump supporter, powerful man. He was an idiot, but guy who was involved in politics. I mean, even if he thought pyramids were for grain storage, it didn't matter. Herman Cain went to this event trusting in what the commander-in-chief says, didn't wear a mask, and died.
Yep.
And this right-wing cultural icon, because Herman Cain is a popular guy in the Republican Party, and he dies inexplicably and suddenly. And it changes nothing. And so that's why when I hear about, you know, people say things like, oh, well, you know, they're going to go and kill themselves, the Trumpsters. And it's like, well, first of all, they're going to kill their kids, and they're going to kill their parents, and they're going to kill their neighbors, and they're going to kill their coworkers, because it's not about them. It's about the people with compromised immune systems, disabled people. I mean, it's the most ableist thing in the world. To go out there and say, well, it's, you know, and that's another thing that it's incredibly infuriating when the right wing uses the abortion tactic of my body, my choice, which they have constantly rallied against. The right has always said it's not about your body, it's about the baby body. And the right wing has completely always fought against that. And then to turn it around in the most passive aggressive, not even passive, in the most aggressive way possible, to say this mask is my body, my choice. It's almost, if it wasn't so sad, it would be hilarious. because the point of wearing a mask is to protect those around you, not
Yeah,
your
like
body.
we're infringing on their rights, you know.
But that's where this individualistic society comes in. We are taught that screw everyone else. It's about me. It's about my rights. It's about what I want. It's about my comfort. And and again, back to ableism. They try to invoke the ADA. These people who are not disabled are trying. I mean, talk about privilege too. Trying to invoke the ADA, which is one of the most holy things we have in this country, for federal regulations to assist people who are disabled, and to try to invoke that because you're too much of a fucking snowflake to wear a piece of cloth for 10 minutes while you get a cup of coffee. It's monstrous. I have no respect for you. There's things I can disagree with people on, and disagree about a lot of things. But if you are going to harm the cause of an affected community just so you can either score a cheap political point or save yourself from mild inconvenience at the cost of someone else's life, you're scum.
What's interesting about that is it's actually a good example of kind of what's wrong with politics as a whole in this country anymore. A common saying is, why can't anyone just disagree anymore? Well, the reason we can't disagree is because I wouldn't say half, but a good portion of this country doesn't give a fuck about empathy or civil rights, and the other side does. We can have disagreements. We can disagree about anything we want and still be friends, but we can't disagree about basic human decency, about racism, bigotry, empathy, civil rights. Like, regardless of whether you want to admit it or not, that's basically what the right in this country has come up against, is those things. And right, wrong, or indifferent, people against them are against that.
Yeah, and I would agree that, there's the middle point is not acceptable, because the ultra right, we're talking like the far right, right? They want things like, black people don't get to be people. Gay people don't get to be people. Women don't have body autonomy. No one should have any kind of equal protection for rights. And what's the halfway to that? Like, oh, okay, you can lynch some people. That's the middle ground.
That's just it. Like, we can't find a compromise in there because there is no compromise. You're either for civil rights or you're not. But to bring it back down, that's kind of the sentiment that's feeding this anti-mask stuff. It's this whole idea about what I want matters, and what everybody else, they're on their own. Fuck them. Let them figure it out on their own. As long as I'm not affected, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, 100%. And they walk this line of, I have the right to do this. The same people who were crying and freaking out over Starbucks not having Jesus on their cup, which they never did.
Yeah.
And McDonald's having gay fries, and losing their shit over a bakery being forced to make a wedding cake. All of a sudden, on the other hand, they want to just totally scream out personal liberty and their right to their own body and their right to not wear a mask. And then in the same breath, will then say it's wrong and they're protected because you can't refuse service to them for it.
And then they call us snowflakes. Like, that's the part that never gets me, is like, you people can't take fucking wedding cakes without losing your shit. You can't wear a piece of cloth on your face without losing shit. And we're the snowflakes?
Yeah, there's no more fragile soul than a cisgendered white conservative.
Oh, God.
Well, and the truth of the matter is no shoes, no shirt, no mask, no service. I'm sorry. It's the same effing thing.
I wouldn't even go that far, because not wearing shoes isn't going to kill someone else.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is like, they're all about the rights of the business until the business's rights negatively impact them. And then fuck that business. They don't get to have any rights. It's what I want.
And even if it negatively impacted them, I don't even think that would be the issue. It really is back to identity politics for them, because if they were being forced to wear a mask that benefited the outlook of Trump and liberals were against it, they would wear masks.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because, I mean, look at them over the flag debate. We have athletes who want to kneel for the flag, and they are wanting to force people to stand for the flag. It's not even about the inconvenience. Yeah. I am loving how the right wing has had to boycott Harley Davidson, the NFL.
Yeah, because that lasted all of about 10 fucking minutes.
My favorite part is when they start destroying the property they own as retaliation.
Yeah, when they
Like,
start burning
yeah.
the jerseys
Yeah.
they already bought or throwing
Yeah.
Keurigs
Yeah.
out the window.
like, cool, brother.
Yeah, or
you
their
you
Nike
only gave the
shoes.
companies their money. Like, you're not sending any message other than you're a fucking imbecile who likes to destroy their own property that they spent hundreds of dollars to get in the first place.
And when your temper tantrum's over, you're probably going to rebuy it.
Yep.
But
So
yeah,
great. The people you hate just got your money twice.
Yeah, but I mean, there's an old saying, and that it's that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And
I like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I do too.
yeah, a lot of historians say it's a very famous saying in the history community. It's fantastic. And I think one of the things that would make this easier is if this is the first time we've done this, but we literally haven't. It's a little more widespread this time because of the internet and because of television, but we went through this exact scenario 100 years ago. I mean, the fact that it's so close to being on the money, it's incredible. So
Spanish flu, right?
1918, 102 years ago. We had the Spanish flu. It came from it came back with the soldiers from World War One. That's where it originated, and it spread around the world. I mean, that's just how we got it. It was from our returning veterans, but they were getting it in Europe as well. And this became a global pandemic, right? When it came to California, we had an actual anti-mask league. It wasn't even just a bunch of MAGA people being assholes on Twitter. There was a formal league that formed here in California. And it started in San Francisco, believe it or not. And it formed to protest an ordinance that required people in San Francisco to wear masks during the pandemic. And the best part is the ordinance that it was protesting lasted less than a month before it was repealed, but it didn't matter. All that mattered was people wanted to be angry at it, right? So when they redid the ordinance for the second time in January of 1919, because this persisted for a while, the people who were there, it's estimated 5,000 people showed up to this meeting in San Francisco alone just to protest being forced to wear a mask.
So what you're saying is we have a long history of people not wanting to do what's best for the country and do what they think is best for themselves.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the ways they got people to wear masks was to protect the soldiers. And the second the war ended is when the anti-masking jumped into place. So like, cases of the Spanish flu did start appearing in San Francisco at the end of 1918. I think it was the fall. Could have been the winter, but it was right at the tail end of 1918. And the San Francisco Board of Health put measures like banning gatherings, closing schools, closing theaters. They told citizens not to gather in crowds, and they should avoid public gatherings, right? This is what they were protesting, which is the same thing that's happening today. We're told not to have large meetings, we're closing schools, we're closing businesses, and the same reaction is happening. And part of it was that people that serve customers, which is barbers, hotels, bank tellers, even clerks at banks and drugstores, they were required by law to wear masks. It wasn't even like a suggestion like it is in most cities here. This was a city ordinance put through. And it shows that the second was October 25th is when they required everyone in the city to wear a mask when in public, or when a group of 2 or more people accepted a mealtime. That was the ordinance, and that's all it was that if you're out in public, you have to wear a mask. If you're in a gathering of 2 or more, even if you're indoors, you have to wear a mask. And that was it.
Well, I mean, and that's pretty similar to what we have going on now, except that that's not happening in every state.
Yeah, well, and even where it is, it's not. I mean, here we live in all of us live in the greater Los Angeles area, right?
Yep.
Correct.
This is a decently liberal town.
Yeah.
How many people do you see walking around everywhere without masks on?
Oh,
Tons.
it happens all the time.
Tons. You can throw a rock and hit somebody that's not wearing a mask.
Yeah, but in Frisco, in the original 1918 flu, when they first put the ordinance through, the Times reported they had about an 80% compliance rate. And the reason for that isn't because people were just nicer back then. It was that part of the mandate was that anyone who failed to wear a mask, or if they wore it improperly, like not covering their nose or wearing it as an earring, they were actually charged with disturbing the peace. They could be fined or jailed.
You may know this. One of the biggest issues in the management of this pandemic is the fact that Trump basically is like, oh, I'm too busy for this shit. States can handle it themselves. Was the same thing true for the Spanish flu, or was there more of a federal government involvement throughout that pandemic?
Same thing was true. It was left up to local governments. In fact, California was one of the few places that did have strict ordinances.
And to be honest, we're still one of the states that has strict ordinances.
But it was more than that. I mean, look at Gavin Newsom.
No,
right?
It's absolutely true.
Yeah, our governor, Gavin Newsom, went out to dinner in public, right? And he had to make an apology. In 1918, the head health officer of Frisco and the mayor were caught out in public without masks at a boxing match, and they actually had to pay fine, and they were charged.
Yeah.
Good. They should have been.
And again, I acknowledge that this is a tough situation because you're either going to be the governor that saw COVID destroy your state, or you're going to be the governor that basically economically crippled your state. And none of them want to make that decision. And so that's why we're getting this middle of the road type of bullshit where people are trying to have their cake and eat it too. And in California, I agree, we're doing better than the average state. But we keep going through this cycle of, okay, they've set tiers, and this is the criteria people need to meet. The problem is counties are meeting the criteria, opening up a little bit, and then immediately spiking. Like that happened here in the county I live in. There are numbers on this. We have 4 tiers here. It's purple, orange, red, and yellow, I think, in that order, if I remember correctly. And we were at purple. Most counties here in California are at purple right now. We got into the orange tier, and then literally within 2 weeks, we were moved back into purple because it's spiking everywhere. So I get it. They're trying to do this so that people can, still try and work. But really what needs to happen here is the federal government needs to pay people to stay at home. That's what needs to happen. Other countries are doing it. I don't know why we're not. We got a single $1,200 check or $2,600 or something in the case of...
It was $1,200 per person, $600 per child or dependent. And it's probably the most deplorable thing that our government... Yeah, one single check. I think it's one of the most deplorable things our government could have ever done for us.
Meanwhile, there are companies that took out loans they don't have to pay back and didn't need by the billions.
Yeah, PPP loans, these payroll protection loans that struggling businesses like hair salons and barber shops and restaurants and things like that, the places that really need this money didn't get it when NFL teams and hospitals and churches and all kinds of other places that didn't need this money got millions and millions of dollars of it.
Billions.
Well, millions and millions of dollars each individually. Okay, billions of dollars total. But hospitals were given like $30 million a piece or something like that to stay open. I don't know what that number may not be correct. It probably isn't.
I know the NBA and NFL got loans though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because that's what we need. Yeah, the NBA and the NFL both got loans. Individual teams got loans, like ridiculous amounts of money too.
Meanwhile,
restaurants that had no business getting them got it. Like it was ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and I mean, as a thing.
Sorry,
go ahead, Matt.
Meanwhile, while this is going on, now I'm not going to go into specifics or details, but I do work in the healthcare industry. And when this thing went live, one of the first, we started doing weekly, not town halls, but basically weekly meetings where basically everyone in the hospital system was required to attend to learn about COVID safety. The first month, we were getting our nurses were getting instructions on how to use trash bags as personal protective equipment. But sure as fuck, all of our police departments sure got tanks when they need them.
Yeah, yeah. Our police have military equipment. There's no lack of funding for that. There's no lack of funding for federal officers to quell any kind of civil unrest. But yeah, doctors have to wear trash bags. The VA doctors, they were reusing masks for 2 weeks at a time.
Well, there's those kinds of things actually happen for two reasons. And it's less about the fact that they didn't have the money for them. It's that they literally did not exist in the country. And the reason why they didn't exist is because I think it was 2018, Trump decided that it would be a good idea to disband the pandemic response team that had been assembled under Obama. It was less about that they couldn't afford to purchase them. It was that they didn't exist, and so automatically the cost of those items skyrocketed, especially when you have people that decided that, oh, they were going to hoard them and then sell a box of N95 masks for like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, but that's the point, is that these things were never a priority. You know, the White House went, oh, Obama has a policy in place. Trump better restrict it and better kill our infrastructure for it. But never will we consider changing the budgets for military, for police, for golf trips. Like, these are priorities, but we'll go ahead and defund a pandemic response policy.
Well, and not only did they defund it, but they decided to basically give out or disperse all of the supplies that had been gathered for this specific purpose.
Yep.
And in turn, when it happened, we didn't have anything. And then you get how were we supposed to know that there was going to be a pandemic?
Fascist gonna fash.
Everybody was telling you that there was going to be a pandemic at some point in time. It was
like
never a matter of if, it was when.
Yeah, that's like saying how was I supposed to know there was going to be a hurricane? It's like, that's a thing that happens sometimes and affects huge amounts of people. And so therefore you should be prepared for a natural disaster.
Yeah.
But yeah, regardless, even with the gutting of that, right? Because that's something you can, I agree with you. We do need to lay that at the administration's feet. But even taking that aside, fine, fast forward. Okay, you got caught with your pants down. You were stupid. And now people are paying the price. But at least you can now act quickly. But they don't. This relief effort has been fought tooth and nail by the right every time. And in Thanksgiving, there was 22 million people jobless. Jobless people who were jobless before the pandemic. And what does the Senate Republicans do? They go home for Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. So the 2 weeks leading up to Thanksgiving, we had the most record, or the highest number of jobs lost in a week, 2 weeks in a row. And that was 750,000 and 700,000 jobs lost in 1 week.
Mm-hmm. And most nations, that's happening too. This isn't an American phenomena. This is global. And other nations are providing a social safety net for their people, so people can eat, so businesses can safely shut down. But not here. I mean, again, I'm no fan of the Democratic Party either. But I mean, the House is Democrat run, and they tried to help by reinstating at least the $600 weekly checks, so that people could stay home safely. And extending the rest of the benefits by passing the CARES Act twice. They passed this CARES Act. I mean, say what you want about them. They tried to do something. But Mitch McConnell and the House, and the Senate Republicans, he torpedoed it both times. And then both houses, Democrats and Republicans, left for Thanksgiving recess. And that's the failure of both parties, because not only has the Republican Party torpedoed any chance of saving anything, the Democrats could have shown for 1 second that they gave a goddamn and stayed anyway. But instead they went on vacation too.
Yep.
Yeah, and you know what that tells me? Is that the elected officials of this country don't give a fuck about you and me.
Yeah, They really don't.
And that is literally their one fucking job, is to do that. Their whole purpose is we elect them to give a fuck about us and what we want. And they don't. But as we discussed on our last podcast, both parties care more about their rich corporate donors than they will ever care about the people that actually get them elected.
And that's what's holding the Republicans back, actually. It is their rich corporate donors, because the thing that's been holding up the talks, AOC actually had a fantastic tweet about it. The thing that's been holding up the talks is the GOP wants part of the CARES Act to include indemnity for companies that willingly expose their employees to COVID. They want immunity for these companies so they cannot be sued and no action can be taken, and they're never going to be forced to give any kind of restitution for knowing reckless harm, like Tyson Chicken making wagers on who's going to die. You know, if that's not a touting, I don't know what is.
This is what you vote for, Republicans. Regardless of whether this is what you want, this is the kind of shit you vote for. You know, I voted for Obama. All right. He did a lot of shit he didn't campaign on, didn't say he was going to do, but he did a lot of horrible shit that I didn't like. I have to own that. My vote contributed to that. And I do own that. You never take responsibility for your own votes. Most of you don't even realize what you're fucking voting for in the first place. Wake the fuck up.
But this is never about that. You got to remember that not everyone, I mean, because again, you know, I try, especially as someone who tends to be pretty far out there left, I try to paint with as few strokes as possible. I save my guillotine speeches for those who need them. There are sensible Republicans, or at least there were. But en masse, the Republican Party doesn't vote on policy. You know, you'll see one of the things they love screaming about is abortion, but that's not even the top issue. It never is.
Ever.
It's not morality.
No, it's a distraction issue.
Yeah, it's not Christianity. Yeah. It's not morality. It's something that gets white housewives mad. That's all it's for. Yeah. What the Republican Party actually campaigns on is nationalism and xenophobia. That's why you voted for Trump. If you voted for Trump, it wasn't because he's a good Christian. It wasn't because he's a good family man. It wasn't because he's any of these morals you pretend to have. You think the guy that pays money to raw dog porn stars while his wife's pregnant gives a damn about abortion rights? Give me a break. He is not pro-life 1 minute. No, what this guy is someone who's going to keep the scary brown people away from you. And that's what you really like. You want a demagogue who shows up and acts racist as hell and says all the things that you haven't been able to say in public until now. And he makes you feel really good about the dark, evil shit that you actually believe that you don't like admitting to. But by having the commander-in-chief talk about it, all of a sudden it's okay for you to come out from under your shit rock. That is what Trump voters voted for him for, in my opinion.
No, don't disagree. And I'll actually give it to you. Of the three of us here, and I find this weird, I think I am the most willing to pay with broad strokes. I think as left as you can be, you're a lot more forgiving, I think, of the right than I generally am. I mean, I've got a one right friend who's kind of, I'm not going to say anything about it, but like he's out there. But for the most part, I find out someone's a Republican, like, it's very hard for me to not instantly devalue them as a person when I hear that. It's a thing I have to be very cognizant of. And you, for all your left-wing tendencies, you're pretty, you don't get there. You'll engage a person and find out exactly what they think and believe before you'll get to that point.
Fair enough, but I would have to say I think I'm just better at simply talking to them like a human. I carry those exact same judgments. Mm-hmm. And saying I'm a Republican gets my red flags up, but I'll hear you out. I'm still not going to agree with anything, but I'll hear you out. But if I got to tell you, if someone says they're a Trump voter, you've lost me.
Yeah.
Because at no point has this guy not been a white nationalist. And the only place white nationalists belong is 6 feet underground.
Yeah.
So no, if you vote for a white nationalist, I don't care about your opinion about anything. I really don't.
Yeah.
If you're a white nationalist, your opinion means nothing. And you know, the thing about Trump, you know, I mean, this isn't my quote. I've heard other people saying this, was the saddest thing about Trump was not finding out who he was. It was finding out who your friends and family were.
Yep.
Yeah, no shit, right?
And I got to tell you, I've cut a lot of people out of my life because of this, and it's been good. If you are pro-Trump, you are not my friend, because my friends are disabled people. My friends are LGBTQ plus people. My friends are people of color. My friends are Jews. My friends are communists. My friends are leftists. My friends are women. My friends are rape victims. My friends are everything this orange fascist stands against. And if you support him and give him your vote, then I have trouble even seeing you as a person anymore. And that's not because I disagree with you politically, because I disagree with Democrats politically, but I think they're human beings.
Yeah.
But if you support that son of a bitch who's an absolute fascist, then you're just the new brand of Nazi. And that's not calling people a Nazi you disagree with. No, you're a Nazi. You absolutely want a fascist regime to take out people for racial motivations.
Yeah. And here's the worst part. I've talked with at least a handful of them that realize it's fascist and simply have come to the conclusion that fascism is better than perceived socialism. Like, that's the scary part about this.
Yep. And then you have the moderate. Yeah, and then you have the moderate who goes with horseshoe theory, who says, well, ultra right, ultra left, they're the same thing. The point is to be in the middle and not do anything.
No. And there's one big thing about that too, is the ultra right in this country wield incredible political power. Not just political power, but like economic power. Like, there is more power held by the extreme right than pretty much by almost anybody else in any other group in this country. The extreme left, and I'm talking about what most people would call extreme left, which, as we've discussed previously, is not really that extreme, wields little to no real political power. The right likes to label people like Joe Biden as extreme left, but he's, as we've talked about, he's a
conservative.
He's a conservative. Like, that's it. So even if I could give you, which I won't, I can't because it's not true. Even if I could give you that both sides are equal, one side has all the power and one side wields none. So I am less concerned with extremism on the left, perceived or not, or real or not, than I am about the very real fucking monster that is trying to eat this country whole right now.
Okay, so let's play a little game, right? We have 3 factions. Like, let's get, again, painting with broad strokes. Let's break everyone down into 3 factions. Let's say we have far left, far right, and center. Okay? Let's play this little thought experiment. So let's play, what happens if each one gets their merry way? Well, what happens if the center gets their way? Well, nothing changes. What we have right now will continue through eternity, and humanity will be static. Nothing will ever change. We will continue on our present course, and everything will be exactly the same, which I'm not a fan of, but there you go. That's what happens if the center gets what they want. Now, what happens if the far right gets what they want? Well, it depends. Are you talking about the fascist right? Because you're talking about the fascist far right, then we have concentration camps, and we have a theocracy, and we have a racially motivated white supremacist government, which, I mean, to be fair, we have that right now. But they won't hide it anymore. They'll at least come out and start Zeke Heiling in front of cameras. And they want, best, we're talking mass deportation. What I think would be far more likely would be, we've already had concentration camps in this country. You think, and that was under a Democrat. You think if the alt-right actually got their way, got everything they wanted, we would not have concentration camps for Muslims, for Latinx people, for gay people? I mean, we already have several states that keep trying to make it a felony to have a constitutionally protected abortion. What do you think they're going to do to those women? It's going to be Dachau all over again. That's what we're going to have in this country if the fascist right. And then you got, okay, what about the libertarian right? Well, then it's just a Mad Max terror zone. You're going to have warlords. It's going to be King Jeff Bezos, fighting some army general for control over North Carolina. That's what you get in the libertarian verse. Okay, and let's go the other way. So let's go all the way to the far left. What happens if the far left gets their merry way? You get socialized medicine, and you get a heavily socialist society. Now, there are plenty of times that doesn't work out, mostly because of American intervention. I would love to see how socialist societies progress without America trying to destroy them through assassination and embargoes. But that's the thing, is the worst case scenario is they try for humanity and fail. That's the worst that could happen if the far left gets everything they want, is everything fell apart because we tried to give too many babies food.
Yeah.
That's the worst that could happen. And so it's like, that's where horseshoe theory is bullshit, because just like you were saying, like one side is advocating for genocide and one side is advocating for humanity. And the debate is whether or not that's reckless. That's the worst, is whether or not it's reckless.
And the worst part about this is the things that we want ultimately have no effect on the right. Like gay people getting married. You don't like gay marriage? Don't get fucking gay married. Let the gay people get gay married and leave them the fuck alone. Mind your own goddamn business. Don't like the idea of transitioning. You don't have to like it. What you do have to do is treat them like fucking human beings, use their fucking pronouns, and go on your merry day. Like, it's not that hard. Your whole life is ultimately not affected by the changes we want. In fact, in most cases, it could conceivably get better.
Yeah. And the most humane action would be to put less effort into caring about it.
Yeah.
Because fine, you're anti-gay for whatever fucking insecure reason you have, and honestly, you should take a good hard look in the mirror at your own sexuality if you have a lot of hatred for gay people.
Yeah.
But all you have to do is just stop giving a shit. You can be like, well, I hate gay people, but I'm going to keep it to myself because I guess it's whatever. Congratulations, you just did better because you shut the fuck up about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's where the right goes. And it's just like you were saying earlier, Matt, is that it's all about personal liberties as long as it agrees with me. Because the right wants to regulate civil liberties. It's funny that they've got the Don't Tread on Me flags and they talk about the Bill of Rights, but what they want is a government that regulates who you can sleep with, who you can marry, what gender you can choose to be, how you vote, what color your skin is versus how many rights you have, whether or not you can be executed by law enforcement and they'll get away with it. Like, this is what the right wants to do, is take away civil liberties while they scream about personal liberty.
And what they want is small government. Like that's the part that always gives me too. It's like, we advocate for small government. No, you don't. You just want to reallocate what the government does and what it controls.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want about racist pedophiles or libertarians, but at least they stick by their ethos. Libertarian says, I want a small government, and they fucking mean it. The conservatives, the alt-right, they want a huge government.
Yeah.
You know, they want a government that regulates everything you do. And that's what drives me batty. It's like, now don't get me wrong, the left also wants a big government.
Yes.
The left is the side of regulation, of federal guarding of rights. Like, that takes big government. But at least we admit we want big government, but we want it for healthcare, not to harass gay people.
Yep. And that's the thing. We want to give you fuckers healthcare too. A better healthcare system would have prevented almost like a massive portion of the deaths that we've seen.
I know, that's the best part, is all these poor diabetics in Tennessee who are arguing against getting healthcare.
Yeah. And the numbers work out. Like, the Republicans keep saying it doesn't, but it tracks. You will pay a little bit more in taxes, but hey, guess what? That $25 you're going to pay extra in taxes, $500 a month that you're paying to, live, that goes back in your pocket. So ultimately it's a net gain. You aren't losing, you're gaining everything.
And you're not bleeding to death in the back of an Uber because you can't take a $10,000 ambulance ride.
Right?
So,
amazing what we could accomplish if we could just get the entire country to give a shit about other people.
But we don't. And again, that's the crux of the issue, is here in the United States, we don't care about anyone else if they're not us. I mean, God, have you, I mean, one of the ways, I forgot, it was a philosopher who said, like, the best way to judge a society is by how they treat their prisoners, right?
Yeah.
It's a good quote, and it's really applicable to the United States, because not only do we have the largest prison population by number, the largest prison population per capita, the largest prison population that is not representative of the racial makeup of the country, we also have things like solitary confinement, which is considered torture by the UN.
Yeah, cruel and unusual punishment.
It is absolutely cruel and unusual punishment.
Dostoevsky. Just looked it up. Dostoevsky.
There you go.
Yep.
Dos Vidania, comrade.
Mm-hmm.
But
Sorry. It was going to bug me all night if we didn't get that.
I know that feeling. But yeah, we treat our prisoners terribly here in California, for instance. Anybody who's tuning in for the first time, we are 3 cisgendered straight white guys from California, and we got tired of our opinions not happening, so we decided our voice would finally get heard. Let our abundant privilege ring. So, for anyone who is not in the ultra privileged classes that we are, please forgive any slip ups we have. We're aware of our privilege and we're trying. But here in California, we have a prison system that sends prisoners off to die in our wildfires. Most people don't recognize this, but the guys who are literally charging headfirst into 20-foot flames are prisoners who are making $1 an hour. Yep. And then the best part is when they get out, they're not allowed to be firefighters because they're felons, because we treat our prisoners like shit even when they're out and they've served their time.
Yep. We have no rehabilitation program in this country. Yeah. It's just a revolving door in and out of prison.
Yeah. So in El Paso, right? Great place, right? Who's surprised it's Texas? But in El Paso,
Texas or Florida.
Yeah. Or Arizona a lot too. Arizona's Maricopa County, that's a place you don't want to go to prison in.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically in El Paso, Texas, the El Paso County Sheriff's Office is actually forcing prisoners to handle the corpses of COVID people because the morgues are inundated. So rather than risk civilians, they send prisoners off to go catch COVID. People who have worse healthcare than your average American are crammed into close proximity indoors at all times. I mean, they won't even talk about the prison population that is dying of COVID right now. You know, they're right up there with the elderly. It's really bad. And we're forcing these guys and gals to again, I mean, prison labor is slave labor. Let's make no bones about it. Not only is slave labor guaranteed under the Constitution to be okay if you're a prisoner, you are housing and forcing someone into labor. You don't have a choice but to work. And if you don't have the choice whether or not to work, that is slavery. Whether it's chattel or not doesn't make it not slavery. And so they're literally forcing these guys to do it. And the best part is when they got called out for it, a guy named Chris Acosta, he's the spokesman for the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. His quote is, "Trustees refused to work unless they were compensated, so they're making $2 per hour." We're paying people $2 an hour to be quote-unquote voluntold to go move COVID corpses. And then the best part is we care so much, right? El Paso cares so much about dealing with this COVID issue, right? Right as this is happening on the 27th of November, the state appeals court, again, this is not the first time, blocked the El Paso County shutdown of non-essential businesses. It was supposed to last until December 1st. It wasn't even like an indefinite thing. They couldn't even handle that.
So like for a week.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm showing here from what I read, the judge, Ricardo Samaniego, issued the shutdown on October 29th. So just over a month, starting November, ending December 1st. And just to slow this outbreak that we're going to have post-Thanksgiving and leading up to it. But all these local restaurants and the Texas State Attorney General, Ken Paxton, totally filed this lawsuit to block it again. So we are forcing prisoners and people held captive by the state to catch this disease that we can't be bothered to close restaurants down for 1 month for.
Yep, that makes sense.
Sounds American to me. That's on brand, at least.
Again, at least we live in California where they do things like shut down restaurants and bars and at least try.
Yeah,
regardless of whether it's successful, there's at least an attempt at controlling this.
Well, but a half-assed attempt. Hold on. I'm sorry. I will not give California credit because we're the richest state in the country. We're one of the richest governments in the world. I'm like the 7th or 8th largest economy? Sixth
largest economy in the world.
So for those listening, in the entire world, the richest economies, it's like the U.S., I think Great Britain and a couple others, and California, a state within the U.S., is 6th on this list by ourselves.
So we are the 6th largest economy in the world, and we can't even guarantee that we're not going to drag everyone out of their fucking homes on January 1st. Yeah. So no, I do not give us credit, because did we have a long shutdown? No. We had a short shutdown, then we reopened back up again. Surprise, surprise, everyone's dying of COVID. And now it's this big deal to even like, oh, well, there might be some curfews and we're going to do some color-coded shutdowns. Like, no, it's all half measures. And the thing is, the virus doesn't care that you tried hard. This is medical science. The virus cares if it can get into your body.
Yeah. And what this is Newsom. And again, on the whole, I like Newsom, but I'm really disappointed in the way he's been handling a lot of shit lately. This virus, because it feels more and more like he is just trying to do just enough to not make people hate him on either side. You know what I mean? And it's
him and Cuomo in New York.
Yes.
It's weird. Like, these are the two hero governors we're supposed to be having. And we got Newsom over here who's like, well, but I don't want to screw over the restaurant industry because they donate. And then we got Cuomo over in New York, who there's things I like about him. I like that he gives no fucks. But he's kind of conservative. And sure enough, when they first started talking about school shutdown, he was like, well, I'm going to leave that up to the counties. And it's like, how are you going to sit here and admonish Trump for refusing to take ownership of this and saying it's the little guy's problem? And then the second the controversial issue of shutting down schools happens, where some people might not be happy with you, you immediately deflect it to the small guys, which has been disastrous in New York City. Bill de Blasio is a son of a bitch, and he didn't want to close schools. And then finally, when he did, he's already said that they're going to reopen in December, weeks after they were shut down for the second time. It's insanity. We shut down school at the beginning of this pandemic. The numbers are more than double what they were then. I mean, can you imagine a school catches fire and someone pulls the fire drill and everyone runs outside, and then once the fire engulfs the entire campus, they're like, okay, well, you've been outside for too long. I don't care if it's bad. Go back in. Mom's got to go to work. And then shoving kids back in the burning building, because that's what we're doing. Is we are literally killing children and killing their guardians just because we don't want to shut down businesses or pay for people to stay home. Because I get it. You're a small business owner. That sucks. That really sucks. I work for a small business owner, and this guy, bless my boss's heart, has done everything he can to keep people's insurance going, to do everything he can. But it's not even his fault. The government, it's not his responsibility. There's a reason we pay taxes. The government is responsible for the welfare of its citizens, and they should be paying small business owners to close their doors and stay home.
Yep.
Keep their payroll going, keep their rent on, keep whatever. And we can't even guarantee people the right to their own housing. We're going to have police dragging people out of their homes when the eviction orders end. And even if you extend that, the anti-eviction order isn't even enough. Because how are you going to tell someone who's already living on the edge, right? Families living paycheck to paycheck, barely keeping their heads above water, that, oh, okay, so we put a moratorium on you getting evicted, but you still owe that 6 months rent you haven't paid. So I know you're really poor, but sorry, you owe 18 grand in debt.
Meanwhile,
and you have to pay or getting evicted.
Paying people like something like, I think it's like 2,000 Canadian, which is like 1,400 American a month for 4 months to stay home. And this was back in March. I think they've extended it since then. But like other countries that are more, I'm going to quote here, socialist, at least according to the right and the rest of the United States, are paying people to stay home. I'm not going to say that they're going to be doing better than us, but this is a good way to get people to stay inside. You pay business owners to shut down. You pay people to stay home. You don't worry about, about the rent stuff. You just say, you can't evict people like we did. They can pay their rent or whatever with the money we give them if you give them enough. And then once we open up, everyone's going to be ready. But it's like Chris said, as soon as we get this vaccine, this idea that everyone who's out of work is just going to go back to work and start paying rent like they were before is ludicrous.
Yeah, and then immediately pay back what they owe.
Yeah, that's the thing. You got to remember too. We aren't just saying no, you don't have to pay. We're saying you don't have to pay right now. All these people are incurring massive amounts of debt just to live, just to be able to survive in the place they've lived in forever, however long they've lived there.
Yeah, we have 3-mile long food lines at food banks right now, and we expect people to pay 20 grand in debt.
All right, so here's the question. So let's just say you own a house, right? You own the house that you live in, and you own a house that you rent, right?
Okay.
So you let's say you got 3 months of where you didn't have to pay the mortgage, right? Because that's what the bank offered you, and
Okay.
instead of charging you, what they do is they just tack that on to the end.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of standard for what they did. All right. So now you've got a tenant in that house, right, that is supposed to be paying their rent to you so that you can pay the mortgage on this home. You got 3 months off. You can't evict them, but they're still not paying their mortgage after 8 months. Okay. So now, 3 months in, you've still had to pay 5 months worth of mortgage. So I understand that, yes, okay, they should be paying everyone so that they can live and pay the rent, but let's forget about that little portion of this.
Yeah, we're talking about debt.
We're talking about the debt. The thing
Of
is
the landowner.
Of the landowner. That's correct. So how do you rectify that?
Oh, easy. Super easy. Super easy. So there was this guy named Mao back in China who did this really good job of murdering all the landlords. And things actually got better for a while. You see, landlords...
Okay, but not everybody is a slumlord, man. And
no.
If you're going to say that,
I didn't say slumlord. I said landlord, and landlords are scum. I'm sorry, but here, let's play this game that you're putting out. Okay, so the rent is due. The bank's going to foreclose. So first of all, we've got a problem with the system here where the bank is going to start seizing property during a global pandemic. That's an issue that needs to be dealt with immediately. Now, on top of that, the landlord is going to lose his property, right? So let's play what happens to everyone. Obviously, the bank is the worst person because all they're going to do is lose a little bit of profit. So the bank's the biggest asshole. Second biggest asshole is the landlord because he actually has more to lose, right? This landlord could lose one of their houses. That sucks. Fair enough. Losing
the
a
thing
piece
is, it's not just one of their houses.
Hold on.
You make it seem as if they have no investment.
Hey, you asked me a question. I'm answering your question. Let me answer your question.
Okay.
The landlord loses a house. I agree. That sucks. But he lost property. What happens to the family that gets dragged out into the fucking winter with nowhere to live and no job and no food and no shelter? They are the worse off. And I will always be on the side of the most impacted. I will be on the side of the oppressed, not someone who lost one of their houses. Now,
okay,
go ahead and retort.
Okay, so I get that, yes, there are multiple people impacted here. The thing is just because some people are oppressed doesn't mean that other people aren't oppressed as well.
True.
And so you're completely willing to forego that the person who owns this home may have a very large investment in this home. Mm-hmm. They may not be able to pay the mortgage. They may have to either try to sell it or give it up or do some other type of thing just so that they don't get pushed into something. Maybe they're not charging a huge extra amount of rent where they're not making tons of extra money. And I understand that these people didn't pay their rent, but they still owe that money.
Yeah.
They still owe that cost of living to the person that they used the service of or the property of.
Oh, you mean the person who held the thing necessary for their survival for profit?
What do you mean held?
They're the homeowner, correct?
Yeah.
So
In the
for profit,
situation
they let
you're
you live in their
describing-
home.
Yeah, in the situation you're describing, though, okay, you what you have to remember, and I think and I'm going to clarify here because I think I get the point that Chris is trying to say. These landowners, a situation where a renter both owns and lives on the property that they're renting out is few and far between. It really isn't the norm. The norm is somebody who has a decent amount of money, owns one place that they live in, and owns another place that they rent out. And in the scenario he's presenting, the landowner may lose a house, but they're not out on the street. They probably got money in reserve because most people that have this much money do keep monies in reserve. They're used to hoarding things. That's what they do. That's how they got rich. And so in this scenario, yes, it's true this person is out a piece of property, but they aren't out on their butt. They're most likely going to be financially fine. They'll take a small hit, but they're not going to starve. They're not going to lose their home. They're not going to be out in the cold, whereas the people that are renting from them are. And so I think what Chris is trying to say, and I do agree with this, in these situations, I'm sorry, but it's hard to feel bad for the person that lost a house when there's literally a family that's going to be out in the cold and could possibly die. And I'm not saying that's going to happen every time, but a family losing a home and having nowhere to live and becoming homeless is a much bigger concern to me than somebody else losing one of their homes because that family couldn't pay property.
I am not advocating for throwing people out on the street.
Not saying
I
you
am
are.
not. No. I'm making a statement here.
Got it.
I'm not advocating for throwing people out on the street. I'm not advocating for people to lose their homes. What I'm talking about is you can't just take away from one person because of another one.
So I think the point here, though, is that the system is broken. All right. Now, in this scenario, Chris has presented you. Everybody is a part of this system, and everyone's playing it. But when the system gets one little crack in it, we see the results, and the results is this person gets kicked out so that this person can keep another house. That is not a good system.
What if it's their only house? What if they own that house and they rent another one? But they can't pay their rent and pay for the mortgage.
So then in that, okay, again, so they're choosing between two houses.
Yeah.
Okay, that is not sad.
My problem is you guys are always advocating for taking away from someone who has more.
No, we're not. Well, okay, sure.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's right. If you don't get to take away from someone who has more,
but you say we should be taxing the rich at higher rates. How is that any different?
We're literally taking away from somebody who has more for those that don't. If we're doing that,
you want to tax them, fine, tax them, but that is not a tax.
So if we called it a tax, would that be okay? If we tax,
no, it's not a tax. You can't just call something a tax because you want it to be right.
I guess, but you're getting caught up on semantics.
I don't think I am.
Your problem is the word tax.
No, my problem isn't the word tax. My problem is that you want to automatically allow someone to have their property taken from them.
The point is, do I agree? Does it suck that in your case, which is not the norm, where someone has two homes and they rent one of them and live in the other one, that they might lose a house? I would agree. That is unfortunate. I am not rooting for that. A pandemic happened. Lots of terrible shit is happening. People are dying. And so someone's right to own their second home versus someone else being thrown in the cold while they are jobless, hungry, without income during a deadly pandemic is the far greater sin. We're arguing over someone's right to own a piece of property and someone's right to live with their family inside shelter. And you're arguing for the property.
I'm not arguing for the property. I'm arguing for that you see it as being something that is extremely black and white. and it's simply not black and white.
Eviction is pretty black and white.
That these types of issues, I believe, are much more nuanced.
Yes,
than
you're not providing
them out to be.
You're not providing a nuanced situation. You provided a very specific situation, and I gave you a very specific opinion on it.
You're right. I did. I provided a very specific scenario.
Okay.
And yes, in that particular case, I think that you're right, except that it's not specific.
Then give us a
like
nuanced
that.
one. I would agree. You're right. That was what you gave us. I did give you a black and white answer. I really did. That is absolutely true. Matt and I gave you a black and white opinion for a black and white question. So if there's more nuance in there, then give me another situation. Have us judge that.
Okay. The issue is that you don't. It's that you don't care that someone else's life may be destroyed by having a house taken away from them, or having to give it back, or however it happens.
Having your second home taken away from you is not nearly as destructive to your life than having your family thrown into the street.
Okay, why do you think that every home or every rental situation that isn't initially paid during the pandemic is automatically going to end in someone being evicted and thrown out on the street?
Why do you automatically think that someone losing their house is going to destroy their life? We're playing averages here.
Hold on. Let me. I can actually answer that question. So the reason is because kind of what we're talking about. Let's bring it back to the pandemic, because that's the reason. What's happening here is, instead of paying people to stay home like we should have, instead of just outright saying they don't need to pay rent, they don't need to pay their mortgages like we should have, what's happening here is we've said, you need to not work. Your work is probably going to go out of business. Your landowner can't, or the person you're renting from can't evict you, and the bank can't foreclose on your home. But the moment everything's fine and all of these restrictions get lifted, you immediately need to pay back every amount of money, all the money that you haven't paid during this leeway period. And as I said, a lot of these people are not going to be able to go back to work. A lot of these people are not going to be able to pay back this money. And when these restrictions are gone, their landlords will absolutely be able to evict them. The banks absolutely will be able to foreclose on them. And when that happens, people are going to lose their homes. And it's not just something that we're saying. Being somebody who would like to own a home one day, I've actually been keeping an eye on this very thing. And a lot of the people that watch this sort of thing are predicting that very thing to happen. Not only that, people that are in the upper middle class jobs, the ones that are safe, that are currently buying houses during this and keeping the price of housing in California going up, a lot of them are predicted to start losing their jobs, because a lot of these companies are realizing that they don't need as many workers to get stuff done efficiently. They don't need to be renting big spaces. They can get 3 people working out of their home can do the job of 10 people working in an office. So yes, people will lose their homes. Absolutely 100%. It's not just going to be the lonely person renting from some, friendly little mom and pop who have an extra home that they've held on to their entire lives. The mom and pop are probably going to lose both their homes as well, because they no longer have a means of supporting themselves. It's going to happen across the board. In the scenario you presented, and again, I'm imagining somebody that's about our age or maybe a little bit older that owns their own home and several other properties. If somebody's inability to pay their rent forces that person to lose one of their homes, no, in that specific situation, I don't give a fuck about that person losing a home. They're fine. They've got at least one of their home and money put away. My focus is on the family that's being put out. And that will always be the case. Now, I agree there might be some situations where I might change my mind. I don't know. You'd have to present those cases, but it's true. There are nuances to every situation. There are things that we're going to have to evaluate, because different facts will change the perspective. But on the whole, in general, myself and Chris are always going to be on the side of the person that is either being oppressed, impoverished, harmed, the minority person, the person that's truly suffering in the equation. we're going to be on their side. And I can acknowledge that there are situations, yeah, it might be some little old lady that her husband, scrimped and saved, and they got one little, house that she lives in, and the only income she's got is this one house over here that people rent. And because of that, she might lose it all. That's an equally sad situation.
But it's a minority.
Yeah, but again, that's not the norm. We paint with broad strokes sometimes because we have to.
Moral of the story is Kay and I tend to go hard when it comes to things like money and property.
Yeah. So
it's the only thing we disagree on.
What you're going to find here, as we've said on previous episodes, is that the three of us don't always agree. And we are all three passionate dudes who believe in what we're saying, and sometimes those opinions cross.
I think the takeaway is that these are the conversations that are important, and the reason why is because there's that old adage that no one hates a leftist more than a leftist, and it's true. But the reason why there is so much infighting in the left, and there's a lot more infighting on. That's why the Democrats and the left tend to be weak, is because they infight, whereas the right wing tends to galvanize. But I believe that's also a strength. The fact that the three of us, all of us, are left-leaning. Kay and I are on different ends of what we believe is social, where socialism should take, but it doesn't matter. All three of us are in agreement on the left side. All three of us are opposed to conservatism. All three of us are opposed to racism. All three of us are opposed to the things that matter, and we're having arguments about policy. And that is what makes us on the right side. Is because we are willing to have these arguments with each other, and through these arguments is where you find out where you stand, and it's where you find ethics. It's where you find morality. Is you have to have an argument in a debate, because if you don't, the worst parts of your people take over, and that's where the right has gone wrong. Is in keeping with their galvanization, they refuse to have these kinds of arguments with each other.
Exactly. They don't want to do it. And it's a key example of where you can disagree and be respectful and be friendly, because at the end of the day, the three of us are friends. We're good friends. We're still going to be friends. And
look what's happening on the right. They're imploding over that same thing. Tucker Carlson, right?
Yep.
Nazi poster boy for Trump. The second he slightly disagreed with the most frothing members about whether or not Biden won the election,
he's for his head.
He's gone. He's dead to us. Kill him. All of that. Whereas the three of us can go at each other over policy, but at no point do the three of us ever think anyone's evil, inhumane, terrible. Like, that's the thing, is the left doesn't demonize each other over these things. We have hearty debates over policy that matters, that changes lives. Even if you disagree, that's okay. But these debates and these conversations need to happen in all of our societies, on every side of the aisle.
And it's actually a good point to ask. If there's any listeners, this would be a great topic to have you guys reach out to us on any of our social media platforms. We'd like to get opinions. Is there anyone out there that's more, in line with where Kay stands on this? Is there anybody out there that's more in line with myself and Chris? Like, that's the important part too, is we'd like to get a feel for our audience and where you guys sit.
I'm going to go ahead and say we should make a gentleman's bet here. I'm going to say the audience is definitely going to pull with Kay on this one. He is far more in what most people would have in mind as sanity and righteousness, where I think you and I are far more fringe.
We're a little more willing to grab the guillotines. I would agree with that. And that's the thing. I think that's one of the reasons
why
we're
more far in line with the average person.
And I think it's one of the reasons why we value Kay's opinion. I think our little threesome here, giggity, is,
I like it,
exactly how I wish the regular world is. I think Kay, and I don't mean this as an insult, but Kay is what conservatives should be. He is that person that is on the right side of the history, but is looking at the more extremists of our party and saying, hey, take a step back, think about what you're saying. There's probably some consequences here you're not thinking about, and we need that. It's a good thing.
I would agree that Kay wants the right things to happen. He wants everyone to be taken care of equally, and he wants common sense to prevail. Kay loathes extremism.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah, you loathe extremism.
Exactly. I do. I loathe the extremism because I see that it isn't always as black and white as we're always led to believe. And I think that oftentimes people lose sight of some things for others.
Yeah. In this, another analogy for you guys, Chris is the one that is pushing the train of progress forward with all his fucking might. Kay is the person that's, in the driver's seat that's kind of tapping on the brakes and saying, hey, not so fast. We got a hill coming up here. I'm the guy that's sitting in the passenger's seat yelling at Chris to push harder.
And the Republicans are putting dynamite on the train tracks.
Exactly. Exactly. And we're going to try to keep the infighting in our little group to a minimum here, but it's also important because you guys get a better feel for where we all stand, and I think that's important.
It is. And I think, again, these conversations are important because what's important is to have healthy, hard debates about policy and beliefs and walk away knowing you're still on the same side. That's what matters. And that's how you change the world for the better, not the worse.
Absolutely.
So beyond leftist infighting, one of the things I think everyone can agree on, left, right, everyone, is that the way we're going to get out of this, regardless of whether or not America is the worst place in the world and everyone else is doing this better than us, the real solution here is a vaccine. That's the only way we're really going to get out of this tunnel, right?
Yeah, vaccines are definitely one way that we're going to get out of this tunnel. It definitely seems like that's the only way that the U.S. is going to get out of this tunnel anyway.
That's for damn sure.
So there's 2 vaccines right now that are mRNA vaccines.
Yep.
They are by Pfizer and by Moderna.
Yep.
So just a few facts regarding these vaccines. They are 90% effective by the Pfizer vaccine and 95% effective according to Moderna. They're very close.
Yeah.
And I think that we're probably likely to see in that range between 90 and 95. They essentially work the same. They are a 2-dose vaccine given approximately 3 weeks apart. The Pfizer vaccine had 44,000 volunteers. Half of them received the vaccine, half of them received placebo. And out of those 44,000, there were 170 cases of COVID that were observed in those 44,000. 162 of those cases were in the placebo group. So that means there was only 8 cases of COVID that were observed in the group that got the vaccine. The one real bad downside to the Pfizer vaccine is that it has to be stored at 95 degrees Fahrenheit negative 95 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yep.
So this is a problem because how do you transport something that needs to be kept at negative 95 degrees? So
very difficult.
And expensive.
It's difficult. It's actually not as bad as one might think. They can be in packages with dry ice.
Yeah, that's what I heard was the dry ice is going to kind of be the savior for this.
Yeah, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 1,000 to 5,000 vaccines per container. Now, The advantage with Moderna. What was that, Chris?
But I literally wanted to pipe in with a question I think you're probably going to head to. That is that because of the temperature difference, the Moderna one is going to go towards cities or go towards like rural areas, and the Pfizer was going to stay in the big populated areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. I don't know if that's actually.
It's a vaccine. They're not gonna prioritize one over the other. A lot of the places that can store the Pfizer one are going to store it. And one thing I did want to add on top of it, it's storage. However, once they pull it out and reconstitute it, it can be held at the regular refrigerator. And it's good for a shelf life. I think if it's not reconstituted, it will last for 5 days in a regular refrigerator. If it is reconstituted, it will last for 6.
Correct.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Difference between the Pfizer study and the Moderna study is Moderna started out with 30,000 volunteers. Once again, half got the vaccine, half got the placebo. They found 95% effectiveness. And out of their 30,000, they had 95 cases total of COVID, and 90 of those were in the placebo group. So that's where we get our 95% with them.
Okay.
Biggest difference here between them is, like I said before, the Moderna vaccine is refrigerator stable for up to 30 days. So it's going to be a whole
That's
lot
way
easier
better.
to transport, cheaper,
And for hospitals to hang on to it.
Yeah,
and not even
so
hospitals, medical facilities that aren't as big or have such
just
or have
medical facilities, like if they want to go out and do a big campaign of vaccinating people, they can keep them in coolers, versus having to be in very heavily insulated coolers with dry ice and things like that. These two vaccines, while they're prepared to make millions of doses, they're saying by the end of the year, which I don't think is going to happen now either, that they would have about 12 million doses, and that translates into about 6 million people being able to be vaccinated. With the population of 300 odd million Americans, most people aren't going to be getting vaccinated until well into 2021, probably May or June. Vaccines, the initial ones are going to be going to healthcare workers. They're going to go to the elderly. They're going to go to the military. They're going to go to prison populations, probably. Places where they need to control coronavirus much more fervently than the general population. So while I would love to be first in line, I will definitely not be first in line. By luck, I don't work in the healthcare industry. I work, in a completely different industry, and I will definitely get it as soon as it is commercially available. So there is hope. There is definitely things to look forward to. There will be an end to this, but it's not going to be for quite a long time still.
So hunker down, wear your fucking masks, and stay 6 feet apart.
And don't congregate. Even if we're talking about 6 feet apart, or we're talking about wearing masks, which are very, very important. I feel one of the biggest things that people don't want to talk about is I've heard people say, well, we were wearing masks. And it's like, but there was 30 of you.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter if you wear masks to a party. 4 people hanging out without masks is better than 50 people hanging out with masks. Large gatherings, and people want concerts back, and they want indoor dining, and they want all these mass group activities, and these are the super spreader events, and these are the killers. So everyone, yes, wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, try not to congregate too much, but please, for the love of God, don't go anywhere crowded. If we can decrowd places, that's going to go a long way until Kay's company vaccine comes out and saves us all.
I wish it were my company.
Yeah, no kidding. You'd have multiple houses.
No, I'd be giving it away for free.
Yeah, like the polio vaccine. I mean, that's another question that's going to really kind of happen is, how is this going to be distributed along with the profit margin?
All right, so actually, Pfizer has a contract with the U.S. government for $100 million for as many doses as that will buy, and like I said, that's about 12 million doses. So those are already paid for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what Moderna's vaccine is going to cost or what their deal with the United States government is for their vaccine. I can only assume that it would probably be similar. Basically, these companies are going to be flat out producing vaccine until everyone in the United States and abroad is going to be vaccinated. As far as I know, these are the closest two vaccines to being approved in the US as well as worldwide. And so once they are approved and are available, a lot of those doses are actually going to be going overseas as well for other countries to use. So it's not just staying here in the U.S.
Oh yeah, no, that I know. But my question is though, what is going to be the profit version? Like, so far you're saying this has been basically taxpayer funded, which I am on board for. My question comes down to these companies. I mean, this is Moderna, this is Pfizer. These guys are definitely for profit organizations that have actually done a
Yes.
lot of dirty shit for money. What's their takeaway going to be profit wise, and how are we going to make sure that people don't die for this? Like, again, the polio vaccine was not registered, it was not copyrighted. It was given out to everyone, and it was, I mean, that guy, I forgot the name of the doctor, but he rather would have saved the world than be wealthy. And I know we're not going to see that happen here, but I'm curious where we're going to draw that line, and if anyone even knows where that line is yet.
Jonas Salk, by the way.
Thank you. Yes, Jonas Salk. That is a hero. Thank you, Matt.
I don't know what that means. I don't know what their profit margin is. I don't know if it's something that they're deciding that they're going to make very little on and are going to give to the world. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would have to do a little bit more research into that. I didn't look into that.
I haven't. I've done a cursory looking into it, and I haven't been able to find anything on that. So I just didn't know if you ran into any kind of statement from them. But I looked a while ago, and I couldn't find them promising anything one way or the other.
Yeah, I did not either, to be honest.
Well, that's a good thing for everyone to start looking out for. Let's keep an eye on whether or not they're going to hand this out humanely to those who can't acquire it.
From what I remember reading, not for 100% sure, but I thought they were saying that at least everyone in the United States would get vaccinated at no charge. But that may be incorrect, and that may me just being wishful.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess my worry is the rest of the world as well. So yeah, that vaccine's going to be a good space to watch for how that gets distributed. So, good talk. What do you guys think? Let's do some white guy takeaways. Matty Cakes, what did you get out of this?
So, I mean, we can be a little bit down here sometimes, but I think the point is that we all have a little bit of hope. Things are getting better. We've got, 2 companies coming out with a vaccine. I don't have a lot of faith in Joe Biden personally, as you may have already learned, but he's not Donald Trump. And hopefully, we can get enough people pulling him left that we might get some actual change moving. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's what I hope for. We've got like I said, vaccine on the way. And, the point is, be vigilant, pay attention, trust science, and, keep hoping, folks.
What about you, Dr. K?
What I'd really like to impress upon people here is that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I know that nobody wants to hear that because a vaccine is on the precipice of being available for distribution. But remember, Thanksgiving just happened, and in about 4 or 5 days, we're going to see another huge spike. And what we need is for this entire month for people to stop going out. Wear your masks, stay the hell away from everyone, so that maybe we can have a Christmas that doesn't suck and isn't rife with cases of COVID on January 6th. Because I don't know about you, but I'd like to go see some family for the first time in a year or more. Be safe. Do what you need to do, but be safe about it, man. That's all I can say.
As for me, I would say that I think you're both absolutely right. Trust in science, take care of each other. COVID isn't over because you're tired of it. And if we can all be adults and just wear a damn mask and care about other people other than yourself, if you can put someone else's safety and life ahead of your inconvenience, we can do a lot of good. Science will win the day. We just need to be patient. And the other thing I catch from this is I think one of the reasons that the United States has fallen behind is because we don't take the individual's livelihood as the responsibility of the government. We've had a failure of our federal system here. And if we could do a shutdown and if we could do things where people's basic amenities at all levels of society were covered, whether it's homeownership, whether it's business, whether it's the poor, whether it's the middle class, doesn't matter. If we could care for everyone's needs for a short period of time, we could really bring these death numbers down. And that's why I think we're so ahead of it. And I think that's a conversation that is going to take some time, but we all need to start having about the role of our governance and where our money's going to help us.
All right.
Well, everyone, thanks for coming in. This is our third episode. I think it was pretty good. Went a little all over the place, but so does COVID. So I think it was fitting. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for being here. Always happy to have you coming and listening to three guys talk about their opinions. Please remember to like, follow, comment, subscribe, share. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We are on Pandora. We're on Spotify. We're on iTunes. We're on Podbean. Find us on Instagram. Find us on Facebook. Find us on Reddit. We are everywhere. You can find us. We're small right now, but we are growing. So please come, like, share, give us your opinions. If you like us, great. If you don't, that's okay. We'd love to interact with you. And please join us next week. We'll be back next Monday to bore you about something else. And until then, remember, kids, the revolution is you.